Daled of the Mimer. We are on the fifth page of your downloads, page F in the Sefer and the Dvar Malch. And we were speaking about the idea of Zeh, the Mila of Zeh, the idea of Zeh that we speak about. And we're soon going to actually bring the Maimer Chazal that actually deals with this more in detail about the right now. Actually, in the beginning of this ice, we're going to talk about this Maimer concerning Zeh. But essentially, we explained that the Zeh is going on Elikus in general, on Kedusha, but especially so, Zeh is going on the level of Hashem's essence. And therefore, also Yidden as well are called by the term Zeh, even though Zu is in the feminine. We're going to talk about that soon, because the Yidden are also connected to Hashem, and especially so when they are doing it in a way of they're doing it in a way of bittul and Kabbalah's oil, and they're overcoming. Actually, that the Kabbalah's oil we'll talk about later. But then they come to the highest level. They connect with Hashem's essence, and because their connection with Hashem's essence, so therefore they are called by the level of Zeh/Zu. And now he's going to add another component. Part of this Maimer Chazal is Hashem is called Zeh, the Torah is called Zeh, Yidden are called Zu, and Moshe Rabbeinu is called Zeh. So Moshe Rabbeinu, he's going to explain now in this is crucial to this entire process. For the Yidden to attain their level of Zeh, their connection with Hashem's essence, it's important to have the level of Moshe Rabbeinu. Ois Daled, line 13, page test. Moshe, the connection with Atzmas is through Moshe. All of them are concerning Moshe, it says. And here we're finally going to have the Maimer Chazal, upon which the entire Maimer is based on. Yavai Zeh, this one should come via Kabul Zois and will receive the Zois. We said this is talking about, this one is talking about Moshe, Zois is talking about the Torah. Mizeh from Hashem who's called Zeh La'amzu, to this nation. So now, and then the Chazal goes on to explain who is the Zeh, what is the Zois, and so on and so forth. Yav is, what does it mean that Zeh will come? Zeh is going on Moshe. As it says in the pasuk, is Moshe Ish. It says that this is Moshe, the man. So we see that in Parshas Kisisa not too long ago. So we see that Moshe is called by the title Zeh. Be Kabul Zois, and you will accept and receive Zois, Zoya Torah. It's going on Torah. Like it says, Zois Torah from Moshe. This is the Torah that Moshe placed. So we see that Torah is called Zois, another version of Zeh. Mizeh, he's accepting it, he's receiving it from Zeh, Kadosh Baruch Hu, as it says, Zeh Keli Van Veil. So we see that Hashem is called Zeh, in Oz Yashir. La'amzu, like we have Eli Yisrael, the beginning of this week's of Torah. So we're talking about Amzu Ytzarti. Behind Moshe or Makashim, so Yisrael, Moshe is the one that binds the Yidden, and he draws down into the Yidden the level of Zeh. So this is what the Rebbe takes out of this Maimer Chazal, that Moshe, as we said, is a core aspect of what brings about and causes that Yidden should be Zeh. Because Moshe Rabbeinu connects the Yidden with the Eibishter. Moshe or Machaber, Makasher, Elmus, and Neshamas. Malchus, Moshe is the one that binds and ties worlds and Neshamas with godliness. And this is not just limited to Moshe Rabbeinu during the time of the Yidden going out of Mitzrayim, the Midbar, etc. But really, so the Moshe B'chol Dora, so too, it's in the expansion of Moshe Rabbeinu in every generation. These are the heads of the thousands of Yidden that's in every single generation. That they bind the Yidden with Hashem's essence, and therefore, since they are bound up with Atzmos, so like we spoke about yesterday, Therefore, mamshichim b'mechina zeh, because of their connection with Atzma, so therefore they are also called zeh. Baruch Betanya, like explained at length in Tanya. Gam Amei Oretz, even people that are not involved in spiritual things. Even those that are rebelling and sinning against Talmidei Chachamim. So one would think that they do not have this bond that the Moshe of the generation bonds them with the Eibishter. So we say no. Even they, in Iskashrus and Malakus, my dear Rosh, Al Yisrael, like the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya, Perek Beis, that their bond with godliness is through the heads of thousands of Yidden. And Kimshala Bench and Nimshachum Iskasher and Mayachav, just like again, Perek Beis in Tanya, just like the child is drawn from and is bound up with the brain of the father. Nimtza comes out top of page Yud, Shaidekim Torah mitzvahs through the fulfilling of Torah mitzvahs by day as Kasher b'Moshe Nasim Yisrael through being the two things of fulfilling Torah mitzvahs, like we spoke about earlier in the mind. Also through their bond with Moshe, so Yidden attain and are on the level of Zeh, which is something that shows on their connection with Hashem's essence. So one of the questions we had at the beginning of the Maimer was, why the feminine? Why, even though we see that sometimes Yidden are called Ha'am Hazeh, why do all of a sudden in this category, Amzu Ytzarti, in the beginning of the Haftorah, do we use the feminine form Zu instead of Zeh? So it says in Ois Hey, top of page Yud, Amna Bechina Zeh Kpishi B'Yisrael, number of Losh in the cave level of Zeh, the way it's by the Yidden as opposed to Zeh by, let's say, by Atzmus. It's said in the feminine, Amzu. The Indian explanation of this matter is bond in Hashem's essence through the study of Torah and fulfilling the mitzvahs. Idavke kasher kiyum haTorah mitzvahs eine mitzatam v'das v'hergish ha'adam. It is only and specifically when the fulfillment of Torah mitzvahs is not done out of the person's own reason, out of his own feeling, out of his own awareness. That's why from the fulfillment of Torah mitzvahs is out of the person's understanding and feeling and so on. Even a feeling out of holiness, in other words, he has a holy feeling, a holy connection with Hashem. Not that he just feels the need to be kind to people, and therefore he does all the mitzvahs of obviously Yisrael. When it's about his feeling, he doesn't become bound up with Hashem's essence. There's something over here besides Hashem's essence. Even a complete tzad that serves Hashem with awe and with love, and not just any love, not just the lower level of love, which is the Avakirish Be'esh, the fiery love, but a love of the light. Is not entirely nullified to Hashem. But rather, he is a separate entity, the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya. He is a being that is in awe and fears Hashem. He is a being, a creation that loves Hashem. Yesh Mishayev, in the expression of Chassidus, he is a thing, he is an existence that loves. Since there's some type of existence other than Hashem's essence, so then he is not bound up with Hashem's essence. By mitzvahs and the connection of the Yid with Hashem's essence through the learning of Torah and fulfilling mitzvahs. What is crucial? What is vital to be able to cause that? What is necessary to be able to ensure that this happens? This happens specifically when a person has his connection that's totally based on the person's essence or on his total bittul of the essence. He says, specifically when his fulfillment of Torah mitzvahs is not out of his own reason and knowledge and feeling, and without any personal motives. Gam loy pniyas the kedusha, not even kedusha the motives. For example, so he says a very interesting motive, and he's going to elaborate upon this motive soon. For example, here is a certain motive which he could have, and even that is not the ultimate thing. For example, a pniya, the kedusha, a holy motive is that he wants. Why is he involved in Torah mitzvahs? Because he wants that Torah mitzvahs should pull him out of klippus and his bad state. So in other words, a very holy motive. But the point is, it's focused on me, what I want from it. It reminds me a little bit, it's not the same thing, but it reminds me concerning a story about a chassid that said that how does he get rid of machshav zaris? It's through studying chassidus, and there was a whole discussion about it. Should chassidus be used for such negative things? And on the other hand, it was said that in the royal palace, even the shovels for shoveling up the dirt is made out of gold. On the other hand, the schmutz in the royal palace is not the type of ordinary schmutz. Anyway, the point is that there's a way of doing Torah mitzvahs that's focused on helping me out of my klippah state. So this type of helping of doing Torah mitzvahs that helps me out of my klippah state is something that is still considered a personal motive. True, it's a motive of kedusha, but it's still considered a personal motive. And since there's the person's own self involved, that causes some type of layer between him and Hashem's essence. But rather, he says in line 23, his fulfillment of Torah mitzvahs is what accepting the yoke of heaven. Behind it, this means that nothing matters to him. And all he wants to fulfill is the will of above. This expresses itself by the fact that the most lightest of mitzvahs, if you will, and the most severest of mitzvahs are equal. So the Rebbe is going to explain the idea of chamurus shebechamuras, the idea of severe mitzvahs, in connection with what we are talking about over here, the idea of not having mitzvahs being done to be able to drag him out of klippus. Drag him out of klippus, he's going to connect with the idea of chamurus shebechamuras. Behind this means though there are things that are by him very slight, they don't bother him so much. He's not concerned about the issues that are being addressed in those mitzvahs. And there's such mitzvahs that are by him that are the most severe. Through those mitzvahs, he comes to a level where he's being extracted from the lowest, the grave, from the most horrible place. So a person who's doing Torah mitzvahs because of himself, even himself in a kedushitic way, obviously something that he doesn't feel is like schlepping him out of the klippus doesn't have the same impact and doesn't have the same connection with him as those mitzvahs which he feels is pulling him out of the dirt. So, but if a person is doing it totally out of Kabbalah soil, so the Chazal say, Kalos and Chamuris are the same. Mikol Mokim, line 7, still in all Mekayim is Kulam Ba'ifin, Shekalos, Shabakalos, Chamuris, he fulfills all of them in such a way that the most lenient of the mitzvahs and the most severe of the mitzvahs are the same. Behind the reason for this is because the service and fulfillment of mitzvahs is not because of his reason, not because of his understanding, but only he's doing so out of the acceptance of the yoke of heaven. He wants to fulfill the supernal will. From the perspective of the supernal will, there's no difference between the lightest of mitzvahs and the most severest of mitzvahs. Now the Rebbe says a very interesting klal about will. Now, before we learn inside, it's important to note that the will that we're talking about over here is a will that's beyond reason. We're talking about a will that has to do with reason, so that all the limitations of reason apply also to the will. What he wants to say is, when a person wants something with a pure will, not a will that's created by reason, so then if one detail is missing, so then everything is missing. If a person wants something because of reason, and as soon as you can explain reason itself, since reason itself is made up of parts, so there are things that I want more, things that I want less, things that fulfill some of the purpose, some things that fulfill all of the purpose. But if I just want because of my will, so then it cannot be broken down into parts. And I want to bring an example from a child. A child's will is not like Hashem's will, Chas v'sholom. But it does have the similarity of being a pure, unadulterated will. But by him, it's lamata matam v'das, beneath reason, and by the Eibishter, it's above reason. What do we see by a child? Very often, a child wants something, and he got almost everything that he wanted, but one minor detail was missing. The child is going to throw a tantrum. They're going to completely lose it. And you can explain to them from today till tomorrow, you can explain to them, but you have A, B, C, and D. So you didn't get E, but you have all of these other things. What are you upset? Play with this toy. You could still use it for this and this. No, they're throwing a fit. There's a tantrum. You can't talk to them at all. Why? Because that's the nature of will. Will pure will cannot be diluted. So here the Rebbe is going to explain that difference between will and all the other soul powers. Let's see it inside line 12. As it's known, that the will is distinct from all the inner powers of the soul. All the inner powers, in other words, like intellect and emotions, and so on. And even even the power of intellect, which is the most elevated of all the inner types of soul powers, those types of soul powers which permeates the person, it has parts, divisions in it. All the soul powers that are premium have divisions to it. So it gives the idea of intellect. Even when he fulfills, even when he has one aspect of the seichel, he has one point of the seichel, the seichel tells him to do a few different things, and he does one of them. At least one part that he did according to the seichel he has. As opposed to will, if he doesn't fulfill even one detail, Zay chaser loy kol inyan haratzon, then he's lacking the entire idea of will. So it's, in other words, like this. Will is, it's either or. In Yiddish we say other gar or the garnish. It's either the entire thing or it's nothing. There's no in between. There's no pieces and parts to it. If he doesn't fulfill even one detail of the will, so the entire will is missing. Sorry, I reread that part. The will is in either one of two ways. Either the person fulfills all the details, everything that he was told, or he didn't fulfill the will at all. Why didn't he fulfill the will at all? He did 90%, he did 99%. Since he missed out on one detail, even seemingly a very light, seemingly insignificant detail, then the entire will is missing. So the question is, why is that so? Why is Ratzon different than the other internal soul powers? Line 24, the reason for this matter is, since the Ratzon is an encompassing soul power, it's a very high, transcendent, encompassing soul power. That's not connected with inner aspects and inner components, and the inner soul powers that can be divided and broken down. Then move into this understood from the perspective of the supernal will. There's no distinction and difference between the most lenient, like we said, the easiest type of mitzvah or the most severest type of thing. Therefore, when the person wants to fulfill the supernal will, so then it doesn't matter to him if what he's about to do is from the most severe and the most lenient, or it's going to schlep him out of the deepest pits, like we said before, or not. Why? Because the fulfillment of mitzvahs is not out of reason, not out of understanding, but rather just out of the acceptance of the yoke. Like a simple servant, or on a higher level, he is a child that's a servant. Earlier he says in the Basel Lagani of that year, he explained the Milos Ben Shu Eved Lagabe Eved Stam, in the advantage of a child who is a servant over an ordinary servant, that the servant only fulfills the will of the master, which up till now he said seems to be pretty good. Kabbalah's oil, then you connect with Hashem's essence, you have no interference of self. And he doesn't feel the will, and he doesn't know the reason for the will. So it seems to be that's a very good level, and it is. But Masha'enkin haben the margish sarotzen, as opposed to a child, that a child has a connection already with his father, and therefore he is aware and has a feeling for the will of his father, and often he recognizes and appreciates the reasons that his father has. Still in all, there's a level of a ben shuhu eved, and a ben shuhu eved is an even higher level than an eved. What's he doing, this ben shuhu eved? Mikol Malkim, line 12, if even though he is a ben, even though he appreciates and understands and has a connection why he should do the Torah mitzvahs, why he should fill the will of his master, he doesn't fulfill it because he is a child, but only to fulfill the will of his master. And I think this is very crucial, this point, this Ben Shu Eved, to be able to understand what we were talking about earlier. Because if we look a little bit earlier, it seems to be that the Rebbe is like saying, if you have a choice of serving Hashem with love and awe, and you have a choice of serving Hashem with Kabbalah soil, so it's almost like the Rebbe says, forget about love and awe. So that's not what it's about. Kabbalah soil. Now we do know that the Rebbe speaks to our generation, and he knows that very many of us either are not shaykh to or we're not involved in Abba V'Yira. So he's raising us up and showing us the mile of Kabbalah soil. But it almost sounds as if the Rebbe is saying, no, don't do Abba V'Yira. That's what seems to sound that way. What the Rebbe is adding over here is, yes, you could be like a child, you could be like a son. Have the Abba V'Yira today, Mr. Appreciate and understand as much as possible about Elikuz and about our connection today, B'Shur Torah mitzvahs, and then transcend that. And then become a ben that is an Eved, that even though you are a ben, you have the Ava, you have the Yira, you have the appreciation of Hashem, you have the appreciation of mitzvahs, etc., etc. Still in all, you do it like a child, like a servant without any type of knowledge. By the way, just fell into my mind, if we read the Sichos of the Frierdiker Rebbe, we could see that even though there was a very warm relationship between the Frierdiker Rebbe and his father, the Rebbe Rashab, but very often, as far as requests and so on and so forth, when the Frierdiker Rebbe was doing things that the Rebbe Rashab wanted him and requested from him, he did it like a chassid does it. He did it like an Eved does it. Even though he was a ben, but his approach was a ben shu Eved. He had the appreciation, he understood, he was aware, and still he did it as an Eved. Anyway, now the Ois is going to wrap it up and say, this is how the Yid becomes the connection with Zeh. And this can explain why we use the feminine term Zu. The feminine term Zu indicates that there's nothing of myself. I'm just a receiver. And that is the way how we connect with Hashem's Zeh. Line 13, it's only through the fulfillment of Torah mitzvahs with the acceptance of the yoke of heaven do we have this bond with Hashem's essence, and that is necessary to be able to attain the level of Zeh, like we said before, because only Hashem's essence is called Zeh, and therefore, how can we attain the level of Zeh? By our bond with Hashem's essence. That's why it says Amzu in the feminine, and Shukol in Yoni who Yosef Kibul Nekeva. His entire idea is to be a vessel, a receptacle, the idea of the feminine. And he does the service with the acceptance of the yoke of heaven. When he has this level of Zu, the feminine, he becomes on a level of Zeh, that indicates his bond with Hashem's very essence. So his Zeh is only via Zu. In other words, his Zeh is a Zuzeh. His Zeh is a result of his feminine nature of having total Kabbalah soil to the Eibishter. Okay, we'll stop over here. Any questions?